Great. Good evening and welcome to our virtual facilities committee meeting, the Radnor Township School Board. We have a very full agenda this evening, so I'm going to go quickly. Bill, do you have any introductions or administrative remarks? I know we have some guests. I'm going to introduce them when we get to that point. Agenda.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. A couple of quick administrative remarks. I just wanted to kind of catch us up from last month to this month with what we've been doing. The custodial team, the highlight there is that they've really had to adjust and test out our new schedule. And so working in phase 2, they've done a great job. I'm proud of them for making the adjustments that they've had to make to keep all the buildings sanitized and looking great. Maintenance crew has been finishing, kind of doing finishing touches on our phase 2 plan just in time to tackle our end of summer and early fall projects. They're doing a great job with that. Just today, they were finishing up a major boiler repair in the administration building. Thank goodness we've had great weather, but in another week or two, we'll say we got that done just in time. They're also keeping on top of preventive maintenance. Our HVAC guys have been focusing a lot on our filters, repairs, fresh air exchange controls, so that all that's part of our indoor air quality management plan. And we're keeping up on that. With all the other summer stuff that we're just playing catch up on, and it's going well. The Radnor fields are getting lined, or have been lined, so that we can get fall sports started. And at the same time, you've been seeing the same crew is kind of out putting lines and dots for social distancing outside and around our buildings. And that's played out for 3 weeks now. It's worked pretty well. And I think it's been kind of fun for the guys doing it and maybe for the students as well. And I should mention, on the ground floor of the administration building each month, to kind of give a little update since the flood over 2 months ago. But our contractors wrapped up work this past weekend. They're sort of turning the space over to us. Radnor Education Fund moved into their space officially last week, and we're sort of moving around the ground floor, moving everyone back in one at a time as we shuffle furniture around and bring it back in. So our technology department, who's working wonders throughout all of this, will actually be back home, about a week or two as they unpack their stuff and kind of get back into their space. So that's going well. Community-wise, just a couple of things came up last week that I wanted to mention. One, I wanted to thank our Radnor police and our township administrators, who have been very helpful in supporting us getting back to school, getting us back with our adjusted schedule. They've been helping with traffic and also building monitoring. So I wanted to thank them. It was announced just last week that advertising for the opening of bids for the TAP trail went out. So that tells us that that is going forward. And I would suspect, I don't know the actual schedule, but I would suspect that the bidding would happen, over the winter.
Lily Collins, and I'm going to walk you through my skincare routine.
And so that was the TAP trails going forward, and more details to come as the township tells us. And then the Shade Tree Commission I mentioned last month. And Lydia, you're laughing at the commercial, but you're also smiling because we're getting trees, and they're coming in November all around the administration building and over at Radnor Middle School, right out my window here. That concludes my administrative remarks.
Great. And I understand from,
I was just going to compliment Bill on his skincare as well. Bill, you look great.
Yes, I understand from Mr. Batchelor that we have no public comment. So the next item is approval of the minutes from last month's meeting on September 22nd. Do any of the board members have comments? Has everyone had a chance to review them? Okay, so can I assume those are approved? Thumbs up. Great. So the first agenda item is the feasibility study update. And we have Mr. Steve Behrens here from Breslin Ridyard, from our fabulous architecture firm that seems to be here regularly. But Bill, I don't know which one of you is kind of leading the presentation on that, so I'll let you two take this one.
Steve doesn't know it, but he is leading the presentation. I'll start just by saying that Steve and I met a couple of times over the last 2 weeks as they finish up sort of their chapter 1 of this feasibility study. And we mentioned last month that we'd be delivering in a sort of chapter 1 and chapter 2, 2 parts of this feasibility study. As it wraps up, I've gotten a peek at the draft, and it's really comprehensive, and it's really informative. I'm happy to see it, coming forward. I should also just remark that we have been reaching out this past week to try to formulate a steering committee for sort of receiving all this information so that we can take it into chapter 2. That's something that we hope to maybe by end of next week have that steering committee, those members kind of selected, or we're looking for volunteers. Anybody out there, shoot us your name if you want to be on yet another committee. But all seriousness, we believe that, our goal would be a month from now at facilities to sort of be delivering this basically a presentation of what we've been working on. Steve, is that fair summary of where we're at, an update of the feasibility study?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Bill. Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. That chapter 1 that you refer to is the comprehensive assessment. And yes, we hope to be in a position to have met with the steering committee, kicked off that review, and then be presenting in some fashion the results of the assessment piece, and then moving forward into the construction options. The outflow of the assessment piece also will help with budgeting, as it includes the capital planning aspects for the next 10 years.
And so if I could just jump in, so make sure I'm understanding the, so chapter 1 or volume 1 of the feasibility study at next month's facilities, too many F's, facilities committee meeting, we'll have an opportunity to get a preview of that assessment and the identification of what will that 10, 20-year capital needs based on the assessment, what you're seeing as some of those capital needs, 10 and 20 years. Is that what we would see next week, Steve?
That's right.
Next month. And then our plan administratively, so to the board, and as Bill mentioned, is that we want to form a steering committee. And we want to form a steering committee that can take some time to now digest this information. So we want to have board members on that steering committee. We're looking for community representation on that steering committee as well. So board members, we want you to think about over the next week or two, let us know who are those people that we would be important to have on that committee. Obviously, we want representatives from the administrative team, from our employees and staff. There's critical people that we want to have part of this, but we want to put together a core group that can really digest now this assessment, digest this capital needs that we have for the next 10 and 20 years, and then work then as a committee, working with our architect, working with Steve to look at what are some of the options to address what are these capital needs that are identified. Is that accurate, Steve? That's kind of the volume 2 of the work that would begin starting in November and then work beyond November on that.
Yes, that's correct. Right.
So board members, you can email me directly or email Bill if you have suggestions for any names. That would be great.
So
Can I just real quick, Lydia, I realize,
yes,
I think most of the committee members know this, but I realize just for context for the public watching this. So the district sets a set of goals every year. The board works with the superintendent to set goals. And one of the goals for the 1920 school year, which we had a lot of them, so we're carrying a number of them over, was to actually develop a long-term facilities plan that reflects the enrollment, program needs, and other district requirements, building requirements. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the feasibility study. The initial step of that plan was to conduct a study of all the facilities, which Breslin has done with a number of different engineering groups and other specialists who understand these systems far better than most lay people. And now we need to take the next step, get a plan together, and then actually we'll get the report together to then form the plan. I guess before anybody volunteers for a committee like that, one of the things they're going to want to know is what's the time commitment? How often will it meet? is this, they're going to meet for the next year, they're going to meet for the next 5 years, it's a 3-month commitment, those kinds of things. And if we're looking for people with specific types of either expertise or experience or, even just experience with the buildings, that would be helpful for people to understand, I think.
And Steve, timetable wise, what would you see in, your practices with other districts? I mean, I think we talked briefly about this, but that was a week or so ago. We'd be looking to try to work through this to the spring with a steering committee. Obviously, if things go well, we'd love to be early spring, trying to come back to the board with some recommendations, but sometime in the spring, is that where you see it and where you see the timetable in other places?
Yes, precisely. I think it can really, as far as the scope of our work, is really 2 to 3 months, I would say. And when that coincides with the appropriate time to present and have it get the hearing that it deserves within the board schedule and the capacity to take on another thing amidst everything you're doing, we're flexible with respect to that.
So I want to come forward and say, I think that we should put the brakes on this particular project at the moment. I understand the need to catch up with our long-term facility planning. I know that we've sort of just been limping along with that. I get that, but I would like to see the focus for all the administrators to be working on, just the educational piece, keeping the schools open. And of course, this has a huge impact on Mr. Dolan because he's got to keep the buses running and, answer all the janitorial concerns. And I just don't want to see, and I so respect Mr. Batchelor's desire, I really do, to try to keep everything going. You're just like, you want to do everything that we've set out to do. I think it's up to the board. So I'm really speaking to my fellow board members here. I think it's up to us to prioritize a little bit at this point what we want our administrators to be doing. And I want them to be answering day-to-day questions about teaching and learning and staffing and virtual learning. And there may be things that come from this that have a huge impact on facilities, because we may decide that we really like some aspects of virtual learning and we want our facility to look different after experiencing a few months of this. And we haven't had a chance to let any of those lessons sit in, to sort of sit with what's going on and figure out what's good about it and what's bad about it. And so for me, I just can't keep up at this pace, and I don't even work in the administration. So I think that we should put this particular piece of convening, any more groups and talking about changes in facilities, this needs to wait until we know what we want our facilities to look like in a few months. And I mean, my guess, we're going to be in a hybrid model or virtual for the rest of this year, for sure. And it just seems completely obtuse to me to be talking about, what are our facilities needs when that isn't really how we're even using our buildings right now. Like, we're kind of in not a crisis state, but certainly a new normal, everybody's calling it. And so to me, this just doesn't fit. And I do understand the critical need of it. I just would like to push it off till the spring. I don't know who's going to volunteer for a committee like this when they're teaching, I'm thinking of parents, they're teaching their kids at home. They're trying to do their jobs virtually. It just doesn't fit with where my head is. My head is, let's stay healthy. Let's keep each other from infecting each other with any illnesses. This isn't the time to be convening a committee that honestly may look very different after 2 months of this. We may want our facility to look different. So that's my opinion.
No, and I absolutely understand. And I think, Mr. Dolan and I have talked about, look, gosh, who has the bandwidth for a steering committee? Who has the time for all this? But what he has said to me privately, and he doesn't have to say it publicly, he can say something different, but what he said to me privately is more than once a week when he's trying to do something, when something comes up in the district, when he needs to budget with Michelle, when he needs to make a decision about what to order or what to change, he goes, gosh, I really wish I had that feasibility study. I really think that as overloaded as everybody is, that it would actually make his job easier to go through this pain now and get it done so that he has this long-term plan. And I think, Lydia, that all these buildings need regular maintenance. And rather than saying, okay, well, we're going to put a partial roof on this building, or, maybe that's not what we need to do. And he doesn't know that. So he can't make the most prudent, cost-effective and efficient decisions without a plan like this. This is why we need a plan like this. I also, and I'm sure Mr. Behrens loves us and would be happy to drag out time with us. I'm guessing there are probably some commitments in terms of the time that we asked him to commit to this and when we committed to getting things done. So in the interest of kind of keeping it moving, I would like to still do this. I'm happy to hear from other members of the committee, though, if you think we're crazy. But I do think that this is also, I'm not sure it's the board's place to tell Mr. Batchelor we don't want this done. I think we had told him to do it, and I think that it's part of running the district. If this is something he feels he needs, it's ultimately, something we've already authorized and asked him to do. But Nancy or Liz?
Yeah, these are all very good points. And to kind of what Sarah was inferring, I think the administration, it's up to them to let us know if it's become too much in terms of not being able to manage this in addition to everything else going on, because no doubt there's a lot going on. The other thing is that from a facility standpoint, if we don't have buildings, we don't have classrooms, we don't have, you can kind of say that that's probably, we need the groundwork in order to educate. So that I see more or less as the groundwork, and we have to Sarah's point, just keep the maintenance updated. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a long list that we already have. And I think, we're hoping the feasibility study can kind of help prioritize that. And the work that we would do between now and the spring is more just dissecting all the information and kind of coming up with a recommendation of priorities over the next 10 or so years. Is that correct? Yeah. So I would support moving forward with this, or having this move on to the full board.
I agree with Sarah and Nancy. I'd actually look to the administrators, to Ken and to Bill, to say that when it's too much. And how much, just for clarification, how much work have we already done in the process of putting this together?
Well, Steve could probably answer the details of that, Liz, a little bit better, but quite a bit to this point. At least this volume 1, chapter 1 is pretty well formed right now. Work went on while we were shut down. It didn't affect me much at all because we just had to safely figure out how to allow these engineers into the buildings. And that was easy when nobody was here. So they got a lot done while we were busy, procuring plexiglass and figuring other things out. Lydia brings a great point, though. It's going to be a wonderful amount of information, but that's also information that we have to review carefully, digest, and make good decisions with. So I totally understand Lydia's concerns. Sarah is right. I do say that. I would like to pull that up on my computer, that report, and look at it for decision making almost on a weekly basis. So like everything we've been doing now, it's a balance. Steve, I'm getting off topic a little bit to Liz's question, but how much work has been done? Maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit. And then is there somewhere in between? Like we're already
is there a pause? Where does it make sense to pause if we decide that is the most prudent thing to do from a capacity and resource standpoint perspective? And where is it not? Like, are we too far downstream on this first phase?
Sure. I'll answer both those questions. One, in terms of what has been accomplished to date, we are, I'll say, somewhere between 5/8 and 2/3 of the way through it. We're more than half, because the assessment piece really includes a lot of legwork. So there was a team of 8 to 10 of us at any one time that was going through the school buildings, and that's the architects and engineers. And what we were doing was looking at the existing facilities, making assessments room by room, wing by wing, looking at the roofs. In some cases, the engineers were popping ceiling tiles and looking at infrastructure and that sort of thing. So, and then assembling plans and putting together a physical assessment of the condition of each building. That was with respect to infrastructure, but also accessibility. And then what comes out of that is an evaluation of the costs and projects that would be entailed over the next 10 to 20 years, and then a prioritization of that. So on a scale of 1 to 5, things that are within a time scale, something that's going to should be done immediately is failing, versus something that you want to budget for, but it's 10 years or more away. And then we also looked at the enrollment projections that were provided by Decision Insight, and will be updated at specific milestones based on their contract. And so that is an assessment of the capacity of each building and how that relates to the enrollment projections. And then developing out of that an action item list for the district to make decisions and plan for the future. The other piece of it that I should definitely recognize is that there's a lot of work that was done prior to this, and the district has their own capital projects list from things that were identified internally. We've integrated that into ours as well, and so that and there's funding assigned for some of those things. So there's things in the works. There's things that are planned that this study will help address immediately, because regardless of what else is going on, things still wear out. So in that respect, it will provide tools to Bill and others in the district for those sorts of planning purposes. So that's really more than half of the effort. Looking forward now, what we will do is look at the ways to remediate or correct or replace and repair the deficiencies that are identified, put costs to that to the extent that they would become part of a larger capital planning project. We would involve phasing, and then the effect of additions, renovations, new buildings on the capacity of the district, and also provide that prioritized list, but then also an integration with how the construction options looking forward may affect the implementation of those capital repairs. So in other words, a common example would be, well, if you know that there's a piece of equipment on the roof that needs to replace, you want to time that with roof repairs. If this building's going to undergo a large scale renovation, then that will affect what you're going to do in terms of finishes and equipment within it. So the two pieces, while they're distinct efforts in some ways, they very tightly are woven together in terms of planning. So and then to your second question, if there was a milestone to pause, certainly in the phase we're in now, with having completed the assessments and then and then moving into the next phase, it is a milestone for sure. But I would just caution that it leaves a little bit of an incomplete picture for planning looking forward, to not take that assessment, those enrollment projections, and identify where certainly with enrollment projections, if there's a deficit, if we're looking at something down the road in a couple of years in terms of the enrollment, well, the planning to address that needs to happen a couple of years prior, right? Because you can't have more space for students online in a couple of months. That takes years of planning in the work. So I hope that's an answer to the question. I can be more specific if needed.
So I just want to jump right in with that exact problem. So what's happening right now, we know, is people are moving to this area. We know that people are fleeing. People with families are leaving cities in a general mass exodus almost, and they're buying homes in districts like this. I have a bunch of new neighbors actually who are young families from inner cities that are coming here because of COVID. So you've got that going on, which may change your demographic numbers. We don't know. I mean, I think that there is going to be a shift of where people live because of this. So that leads to, well, we really need to let the dust settle a little bit. Also, you're talking about our facilities, but we don't know how many people want to stay virtual, who find out they love virtual. This is only the beginning of that conversation educationally. What is that going to look like? And that is going to change what we want to do with our school buildings. So I don't know. I just think it's premature to do this. I think if you do it, you may change a whole bunch of this stuff come the spring or summer when we see a little bit more how this is going to look. So anyway, you know how I feel about it.
Well,
And none of these plans are set in stone.
Yeah, and I was just saying, not only that they're not set in stone, the good part is we're not making any decisions tonight, and we're not making decisions next week either. We are gathering though the assessment, and I think we should throughout the process take all of that in, because we already talked. I actually spoke to Bill and Steve a couple of weeks ago about my concerns over, we contracted with a group to do our enrollment projections pre-COVID. I think they gathered all of those enrollment projections pre-COVID. We now, I think, contracted with them to do a yearly update. We're going to want to see that yearly update done sooner. So we're going to have to take a lot of these things into consideration. But the reality also of our buildings and the needs and what Bill needs to guide him, the operations department needs to guide him, what you as a school board and a community need to guide, our discussions that we have to have. So we really don't have to, some of this can happen together all at once, and we don't need to make a decision tonight. We just do need to keep moving forward with, understanding what are our next steps for this capital plan. And as this has been a district goal that's been out there for, and as you said, Lydia, I know because we've for a couple of years that challenge we have with all this, it's something that we've been working towards.
So in the interest of making sure we get through the rest of the agenda this evening, there isn't an action to be taken. This was purely an update and a plea or an opening, an opportunity for community members who might want to join the steering committee, and to warn people you may be hearing from us. So the next item on the agenda is an update on the wellness and infrastructure project, accessibility wellness infrastructure project at the high school. And it actually is a new component that the steering committee is requesting that the board consider. We've invited Katie Sampson here from the steering committee to join us. We invited a couple other members, but it was somewhat last minute for a couple people, and one person had a sports conflict because we're back to playing sports. So Bill, I don't know, you had somewhat of an agenda on how this was going to get rolled out.
Yes, so we have a few slides that'll just help us as talking points as we go through it, and I'll bring them up. I think I can share my screen and bring them up now. Okay, so what we wanted to talk about is a development in the last few weeks as we've as we're in construction documents for the accessibility and wellness project, we have, we've been through the buildings, throughout this entire project with architects, engineers, as Steve was saying, similar to what we just talked about in the facility studies. And we've kind of come up with there's been talk about opportunities that have come out of sort of the last few walkthroughs and just a lot of stuff that's been going on within the district, some opportunities for, I want to be careful here because this could look like scope creep and yet I don't think it is. I think we're going to bring an idea here that Steve's worked on in the last 2 weeks with us. And we've brought the steering committee to look at it and to walk through the building with us, to look at an idea of some additional use, some better use. So quickly outline it. Sorry, I'm trying to walk and chew gum. Trying to advance the slide here. There we go. So we've discovered at the natatorium entrance, and this will make a little bit more sense. I'm going to actually bring up the floor plans in a minute. It'll make more sense. At the natatorium entrance, where we are developing a new lobby out there and building out into the sort of the current paved area, just inside of there, there's a narrow hallway that leads down towards our cafeteria past our maintenance space. And it is adjacent to the girls' locker room. And so we've kind of looked at that and discovered that there's some very underused space there. And there are also some things that we've been trying to noodle around and figure out how they work into the greater plan, some opportunities. And this space kind of jumped at us and we said, look, this is what we need to do. We need to look at this space and see if it can help solve some of our problems. So we'll look at what those opportunities are, the proposed plan, some potential programmatic uses that and educational opportunities that we can have. That's why Mrs. Kevigas has been so kind as to join us tonight. Some potential history and alumni connections and fundraising opportunities that might be available in this area. And then also, what would it cost and what would it do to our bond funding? And Michelle's here to just touch base on that as well. So I'm going to try to advance through. This is a slide that you've seen before, at least in video form from Steve, that shows that build out that I'm referring to. So this area here is all new. And Steve, I'm not going to do as eloquent a job as you, so you can jump in at any time. We can tag team on this, but this entry here is part of the plan. It's approved. When we get through this area into a lobby, we go through a second set of doors, which is our current outside exterior doors. They're right in here, and that brings us into a lobby. I'm going to jump to the floor plans right now. So what we just looked at in the rendering form was this elevation over here, where we're building out that lobby over by the natatorium. The natatorium is here. That's simply a side view of it. Where it shows up on this plan, I apologize, it's so tiny here, is right here. This area here is the new lobby. What we're going to be talking about tonight is opportunities down this corridor here that heads down past the maintenance building and down towards the cafeteria. And it connects over along the natatorium and then down towards the gym, the main gym. So by way of orientation, does that help us kind of know where we are in the building? And then I'll click here. This again, this blue area here shows the area that we are currently approved for and proposed to build out. So a build out here in the gray area, some renovations in the natatorium, the team rooms, but the corridor and the girls' locker room, these areas were basically remaining untouched in our current plan. And this is where we saw some opportunities that we wanted to address or at least explore. Again, as you come through what would be the new lobby, will land in our existing lobby. And this is what it looks like today. So we come through the set of doors to the left here. We're looking at doors to the girls' locker room here, that corridor that I mentioned that goes down towards the maintenance shop and then over towards the cafeteria. This is that corridor looking from the back end up towards this area with the vending machines. A closer angle of it. Off to the right here will be where the new structure will be built out over it, but this wall of glass stays. And again, if you come through the new lobby and I'm opening up the doors into our existing space, I'm landing right down here between the vending machines and the natatorium door over to the right. Just beyond this wall here, so we're going to take a look at, so this is the space that we feel is really underutilized, and that's the flip side of this wall at the girls' locker room. The girls' locker room. And so this is just some images that show what's in there. There's a couple of showers in there that haven't been used, from my understanding, for quite a while. So they become storage rooms, areas that are, I don't want to call them junk rooms, but if we're not careful, they could turn into that. And then there are lockers. I'm going to jump backwards for a second. There are just lockers throughout here that are not all in use. In fact, they're way more than we currently have use for. And you have a sense of some lockers right here. And then this is the slide that I'm going to probably bring over to Steve a little bit to talk about. This is the area that we've developed a concept to take some of that locker space away, remove a wall, and then widen this corridor a little bit. Steve, if you're okay, maybe you can jump in and walk us through this just a little bit. We have some renderings and also the floor plan.
Happy to do so. Yeah, thanks for that orientation to the existing conditions. And not sure on your screen if it's like mine, it seems to be stretched a little bit horizontally. So the proportions are a little bit off, but it gives you the idea. So on the top of the screen there with the portion of the sketch labeled demolition, if you can see, there's dashed lines indicated that are on the upper side of the locker room adjacent to the corridor. So running sort of left to right there across, you see the entrance to the girls' locker room. Then there's a PE office and a dedicated toilet room, and then a small storage room, and then those two showers that Bill identified in the photograph. So, and then there's a wall that's not dashed between that and the lockers. So that wall there is the wall that would remain. So as you can see from this, all those other walls that are dashed, we're essentially more than doubling the width of the corridor in this area. So what that gives us the opportunity to do, and again, to one of Bill's initial points there about highest and best use of space, we've identified that this is an area that's highly underutilized in current educational models for phys ed, and even the use of the space for storage. And so what the thought was to utilize this in a better way, make it available for different functions, different ways of bringing more value to the space. So one of the initial thoughts that really started the whole conversation was with regard to the Radnor History and Spirit Gallery, and others can speak to that more in terms of the history. But coming on board, when I did, I realized that there's a need to really express and display in different ways some things that are of historical record and noteworthy within the school's history. So recognizing that you would come in from this nice new lobby into what is essentially an original space, and looking right at vending machines and that sort of thing, we looked to see if there was a better opportunity. So so on the right side of the screen, there's three renderings there. One is, it really mimics a view from one of the photographs that Bill was showing, where you've just stepped into the existing building from the doors from the new lobby to the outside. So instead of seeing vending machines here, you see that this widened hallway. And the different components of display that could be offered would be two-dimensional displays on the walls, freestanding. There's a kiosk there indicated that actually could be a live changeable display. And then there's display cases that would then run the length of the corridor. And so these are all suggestions at this point that could really be explored and would need to be explored in detail and find all those opportunities. But we're expressing some things that we've done on previous projects just to get the thought process moving. The next rendering down is a view that's essentially looking from that new lobby into the existing lobby. So that gives you a really good vantage point of what you would see entering. And then the third rendering at the bottom of the page, there is a reverse angle of the top one. So you're looking back through this widened corridor to a display case along the wall, potentially integrating a monitor within that could be live streaming of competitions or activities that are happening. So this could be an overflow space during events, again, with a desire to potentially spread people out given our current situation. And then if I can turn your attention back to the plan in the bottom left of the drawing, you'll see a plan view of this build out. So along that corridor, you see the display cases that I was referring to. There's an opportunity for seating to be integrated in. We'll hear a little bit more about how that could be used and serve multiple functions to create a place of a sense of space and gathering in this area. And then of particular note to the right-hand side, there is an opportunity to create a new family toilet and restroom that would serve this area, the entire wing. Presently, there is no opportunity for that function within the existing toilet rooms. We know it's been well documented, well discussed, the accessibility deficiencies, but one of them is what under new construction is a requirement. And so we have those in the new construction areas of the plan. But in this area, there was a strong desire expressed for a family toilet, and that can serve the public during events and that sort of thing. So, and then if we just picking up another few details, and then I'll stop talking and can speak to questions. You can go back to the plan for just a minute. You'll see around the new entrance into the girls' locker room, it's been tucked back a little bit further, so there's a little bit more visual screening there. Those doors aren't opening right off the corridor. That storage has been replaced with a storage room that's there. That existing toilet room that's there could be accessed off one of the team rooms. That was another plan change that's been discussed in some of our meetings to serve those team rooms. So we're picking up a couple of things here that have come up through the conversations of the project. So that being said, I'll open. I guess what I should also add is that this is not the only place within the design where we're finding opportunities for display. As you know, if you've walked the corridors, there's a lot of great pictures of current, recent, past students on the walls. So that's the kind of thing we would want to provide more, perhaps better space for. Obviously, the field house itself has inherent opportunities. As we move down towards the new fitness edition, we could create those opportunities. So there's other areas as well, but this creates an opportunity for a concentrated, devoted area that would be really accessible to the school and has the opportunity to create a sense of place here. So.
Steve, thanks. I think it maybe going back now that we have this in front of us, it's kind of easier to say Steve didn't come to us with this. It was more maybe organic, as we are working on design documents, construction documents. We're trying to meet with coaches, Mike Friel, the athletic director, PT, teachers and phys ed directors and chairs throughout the building, just to go over little details. Hey, we have outlets over in here. Do we have our outlets in the right place? This is how the HVAC is going to work. And are we missing anything with how we have our doors functioning and our controls of the doors and on the outside gates and security? So as we drill down on those kind of details, things in the conversation inevitably are coming up. So one of those Steve mentioned was this idea of this bathroom. So are we addressing the idea of having an accessible bathroom out on this end, a family bathroom, a unisex bathroom? That's come up. I know, Steve, you as an architect see that more and more in everything you build in the school environment these days. As you come in from the new lobby, and the first thing you see are our vending machines. Is that in the spirit of our, health and wellness? So where's a place we could relocate them? And just finding that underutilized space and saying, well, are we missing an opportunity? We should at least explore an opportunity to take advantage of that now, while we'd be essentially working right down the hall, so to speak. What about overflow for events and inclement weather? There was conversation about, are we able to record and live stream the events from the pool? Well, yeah, we actually talked about that when we were doing the accessibility seating up in the balcony of the pool. But then that triggered the idea of, well, you could watch the live streaming down in this space. You don't have to be actually in the pool to see the meet necessarily. So sort of overflow space for events and things like that. Also the opportunity for cafeteria overflow. Space has been throughout the summer, obviously, an issue. We have rearranged every single space in that building and all of our buildings multiple times. And so it's caused us to look at the buildings a little differently than we would have even a year ago. So I think that this kind of came out of all that exercise. I don't want to do all the talking. Like, PT, are you
yeah,
there?
I was just going to say, can I jump in for a second? So
Absolutely.
I think Bill, captured kind of the spirit of what we've been talking about when we look at, the project in general, but also this particular space that, I think we really need to capitalize on the space that we do have and make sure that we're using it in, an appropriate way, but in a way to maybe, troubleshoot at the same time. We are stretched beyond capacity at this point. We are using every nook and cranny that we possibly can in the high school. And, we really want to be able to alleviate some of those concerns for spacing and provide additional seating outside of the cafeteria. Because again, when it is inclement weather, there really is limited space for the students. And so this presents that opportunity. But it also presents an educational opportunity. that I always try to find them when I can. So, one of the projects that we're doing right now is looking at the archive room. And that's, even amidst COVID, Ms. Richter, who is one of our librarians, who is also an archivist, has been, moving along with the project through all of this and maintaining the students and the excitement and the work. And, that project dovetails really nicely with the potential of this Radnor History and Spirit Gallery that, we're proposing. I love being able to give students the opportunity for, us to hear their voice and to give them agency. And this really could dovetail nicely with that. I've talked to our American Studies teachers on numerous occasions, Mr. Wood and Mr. King. And one of the things that they've always said to me is that as they move through their curriculum, they love to talk about the American history, but they really want to be able to have the kids, really buy into it and to talk about local history too. And I think we did such a nice job with the Wall of Honor. And I think that this could be just another opportunity for, our students really to look into, from an athletic scope, the rich community and the alumni that we have and celebrate them in a different way. And again, use the archive room to do that as well. to research, you know, all of our alumni, but maybe with this particular space to kind of focus in on athletics. So, yeah.
Thanks, Ms. Kevnis. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's everybody that we kind of had on board to sort of explain how we got to here. The next natural thing would be to talk about, well, what does this mean for cost and construction? And so, Steve, maybe you can help in that again a little bit. You know, I think the two obvious questions are, well, can't this just be an alternate? Can we see what that looks like as an alternate? Or, you know, how would we approach this? And then what does it mean to the budget?
Right, sure. Good questions. So we have actually went through a couple of options, presented those. And so this is the results of review with the school, with the steering committee, and putting it forward. And the estimated additional cost at this point is in the neighborhood of $390,000. What that means is there's obviously the demolition that I described, the construction of the new bathroom, and then the display cases and moving the walls, and then also building out some funds for the furniture and those sort of things that aren't directly in the construction cost, but would be part of it, the fit out to make it the space that we want it to be. So there's built-in display cases, there's some loose furniture, and then there's obviously the infrastructure associated with lighting and plumbing and those sorts of things. So that's the financial piece of it. The reason, you know, we're bringing it tonight in the way we are is because it's a difficult thing, as you can see with how the design is integrated into this. It would be difficult to do as an alternate. If we are instructed to do so, we would you know, do our best. But our recommendation is not to try to do this as an alternate because of the way it's so integrated into the construction around it, and then documenting it two ways, and then having contractors try to decipher between the two. So we've seen when it's a complicated alternate that can increase both the base cost as well as the alternate because of questions and concerns that the contractors see in terms of the scope. So it has inherent risks trying to do something like this as an alternate. So our recommendation is to make the decision to based on the value and if this is something that the district wants to pursue. But I can certainly, again, answer more questions on that if needed.
Steve, thanks. I think you put that well. I agree. It's much more bang for your buck if we know we're doing it now and we can integrate it into where we are. Kind of not too late, but almost, you know, just on teetering on too late to integrate it into construction documents. So there's not 6 more of these ideas floating around that anybody wants to throw out there. This is just, you know, it was an opportunity. A bunch of questions started coming together that we felt that we would be remiss if we didn't explore it. And so we did ask Steve to explore it. We brought it to the steering committee to kick it around, and generally the steering committee was in favor of putting this out. So that's kind of where we are at. Katie, I didn't want to put you on the spot too, but I also do want to, you know, hear from you a little bit about this, and as part of the steering committee and somebody who's been at this since the very conception of the whole project.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my mind, I really saw this piece as a kind of compendium or a way in which it's tying a lot of our sort of community, alumni, student educators, athletics, like all together in one project that speaks to like all of the components that we talked about of accessibility and wellness through really sort of the mainstay of how this kind of the inception of this project originated. And I think, being a alumni of Radnor, I can't really think of a better utilization of a space to come into a place that was almost created for me in mind, right? So we talk about that a lot in access and inclusion spaces, this idea of like, was this made for me in mind? And I think when we talk about facilities and we talk about, athletics, that it might not necessarily be something that every part of the community might necessarily be visiting to see a sports game, but as far as utilizing this space for bathroom use, the idea of sort of a family bathroom, a gender neutral bathroom that folks who are using the pool can use for accommodation in that respect, I think is really phenomenal. And with thinking about this standpoint as probably the major leaser of the space with the Katie Sampson Foundation and the largest high school lacrosse festival in the country, a lot of folks think of this entrance as the main entrance to Radnor High School. If you are visiting a lacrosse game, as if you're visiting the pool, if you're going to a basketball game, and I think it's a really missed opportunity if we can't fully articulate the pride of Radnor through this entrance. And I think Steve and Breslin, you have done a really wonderful job in fully articulating a lot of these ideas of inclusive design when it comes to size and space of approach, like low physical effort for users with disabilities. We talk about equitable use. So as you can see in the plans, there's potential for a lot of ways in which, as PT was saying, the ways in which students can utilize a space, possibly extending classroom use even out into the corridor. I think and I'm a history buff, I'm also sort of a funny Radnor history buff because I happened to go to Radnor at the time of the 100th anniversary of Radnor LM. So you would be remiss to know that we weren't sort of forced into every possible anniversary of that moment when I was in high school. So it embedded very deep within my memory. But I also, I think as an educator and a history buff, I think it's a really wonderful opportunity to give students agency to tell the story of our school. And to tell the story of Radnor. And that's what I love about galleries. And that's why I'm an art historian. I work in the art field. I love gallery space and the fact that we can think about this as a spirit gallery, as an archival space, as a way to kind of ignite passion in our youth about the history of our community, I think is really valuable. So this checks a lot of boxes for me. And in so many more ways than talking about, ramps and viewpoints of field space. So I think you're going to see a lot of people from the public. You're going to see a lot of alumni getting behind this. Possible naming recognition could be recognized too. So I wanted to speak from the steering committee, from the alumni perspective, as well as just thinking about it. It's sort of as if we've come full circle with this integration, I think.
Katie, I think that was so well articulated and I really appreciate it. And I'm chuckling to myself because I actually came at it from exactly the opposite position. And I love that we're ending up in the same direction. I know I committed to Lydia when we started this. I'm not interested in glory projects. I'm not interested in just, fancy things that glorify. I want every bit of this space to be useful. I don't want to spend taxpayer dollars on things that aren't meaningful every day in this building. And when this first came, when it was actually Mr. Bajukas very kindly, very firmly, though, pushed the steering committee and said, you guys aren't seeing there's a really great opportunity here to open this space. And I said, no, I don't want to lose existing space in the building. How dare you consider cutting part of the girls' locker room? Isn't that convenient? You know, I had all these just really visceral reactions to, I'm not taking away curricular space, and I'm not interested in spending more money on something that's just, you know, fancy pictures. But, you know, he pushed, and very much to his credit, we all went in to see the space. It was very clear this space would be, to me at least, much better utilized as a student gathering space. I've always, when I happen to be in that hallway, thought, what a shame. This is such a beautiful sunny hallway, and it's just a hallway. It does nothing to the building. And now you take that beautiful sunny hallway and you turn it into a space for students, a space that they can gather either with their teachers or just in, you know, outside the cafeteria. I apologize in advance to the maintenance staff. I know they don't love the students eating all over the building, but and you get to do that in a space that also projects the pride and the Radnor history and what we've done. And, you know, it can be sports. I think you can put up other archival history about the building in those spaces too. I think, you know, Mr. Pachukas very helpfully said, look, these shouldn't be standard displays. They should, you know, rotate, and you should, you know, do something that's timely when you're up there. So I think it's actually, it ticks a lot of boxes. And I don't think when we initially talked about it, we even thought about the bathroom. That was really helpful from Breslin. You know, we were all kind of disappointed to lose plumbing space. You know, you don't want to have to redo plumbing, and to repurpose that and really fit the bill for the accessible nature of this project really came for me. And the pool piece was also important. I know that RAC and the pool families were disappointed about losing even just a few seats upstairs in the pool because it's so tight up there. And the idea that maybe families with little kids who don't necessarily even want to be up in those bleachers could sit down here and watch it, and the kids can be running around in the hallway and hanging out, you know, gives a whole nother option for everybody. So that's my pitch for it. That was my thinking. I don't know, Mr. Batchelor, did you have anything you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, maybe we can stop screen sharing for a moment. So administratively, you know, we're recommending that we would move forward with this addition to the project. And what we'd like to do administratively is put that on the agenda for next week. So we want to bring it to the facilities committee, but we're going to have another larger discussion on this next week. You know, I don't think this will be an item on consent agenda. We will put it on the agenda, and we'd like to administratively put it on as a recommendation that we move forward. And for us administratively, if we looked at it, and you've heard, I think Sarah, you know, really explain things well, all of us having the opportunity to walk it, to see it, to understand it. When we look at the totality of this project, we look at what we're going to do to, you know, float a bond for this project. And I think people know that how cautious I am when it comes to, you know, projects and spending. But at the same time, at this time, in this moment, this additional $390,000, which is, you know, a lot of money, but at the same time, putting it into the entirety of the project and paying for it over time in the bond will make a whole lot more sense. And we thought about the idea of, well, maybe this is something we could do down the road, we could add. And we realized that adding this down the road on its own would be possibly double, at least pretty close, but it could be as close to double the cost of it, you know, just looking at it, speaking to our architects, speaking with our operations people. So it makes sense to do something like this now. It really does. I like the way Katie said that, a compendium of, you know, really bringing together so much of what we've been talking about as a district, as we've moved forward with this opportunity for our kids to see every day and be part of celebrating what is Radnor history. We have this incredible archive room down here in the ground floor of the district office. We have an archive room at the high school. A lot of districts don't have that rich of a history and the involvement in those types of spaces. We have that. And nobody knows it's there because it's in the ground floor of the administration building, and it's partial. And then there's another room with separate documents at the high school. It's time to have a space for that. And also for us as a district, we could use that space, as Mrs. Kevgis shared, as PT shared, how we can use that space for our students during the day and how it makes sense. So we're going to have, I'm looking at the time, and we're always seems to be cut short on meetings. And we do have an executive session tonight with the board, so we can go over a couple of minutes here. But our recommendation administratively would be we'd move this forward out of committee and put this on as a priority action item. And what we'd be looking to do is add this to the project in addition, to the project, because the timing is right to do this now, to not go back later to do this. And then it would be built in towards the overall cost of the bond over the many years that we would be moving forward, where we think it would really make sense as part of the entire project.
So I know Nancy and I have been able to ask a lot of questions in the steering committee, and this is all new for Lydia and Liz. Do you guys have questions you'd like to ask Mr. Behrens while he's here?
Yeah, I have one question and one comment. So first of all, I like this idea. This is the first I've seen it, and there's a long story why. We're just all overloaded. So I didn't know. The name is deceiving. I didn't know what this project was. But so my suggestion is that it not be limited to athletics in any way, but I think it should contain, all the other activities that Radnor's known for. So, make pictures of the Model UN Club or awards that they've gotten, and the Model Congress Club, and pictures of the students that have gone to district band or district orchestra, or like even the student reps to the school board, pictures of them. I could go on and on. The picture of the cast of the play, pictures of the drum majors. That's what I'm thinking. So interspersed with athletics. I've been in that part of the building where I've seen mainly just pictures of swim team up in the balcony and stuff. And it's mainly just sports, but it might be fun for the sports families to see, the other activities, and it might spur interest in something else that's going on in the school. So it's a plea really to let's broaden it to not just be athletics. And so then actually I have two questions. So I don't understand what you mean when you say put it in as an alternate. I don't know what that means.
I think I asked that question early on because Lydia, you could in theory say, well, we could stick to our original plan. We could come up with a second plan and have it bid and priced separately. This is very big and complicated, so that ends up being more costly to develop those plans, and then it would be more costly likely when we get bids in for them. So it would be way more efficient, and there would be savings if we could wrap it up into and say, this is part of the plan that we're going to put out to bid, not treat it as an alternate, but say, this is part of our plan right now. And that's what we're recommending.
Okay. Let me just try it this way. So think about it. You're going to replace your kitchen countertops. You're going to remodel your kitchen, and you bid it as if you're getting Formica countertops. And you say, I wonder what it would cost me to actually have granite, but I don't want that to be part of the main bid. So tell me what my alternate is granite countertops. And so you get a main bid with Formica, and the alternate bid would be if you upgraded to Formica. Okay. But this is obviously much more complex, but so you can put out alternate bids where they say, well, we charge you this for that other piece or this for that piece.
Okay. I got that now. What that term means.
Where we move it up to Formica instead of the granite is the move up. I like that, Sarah.
And then my last question, how are swim families able to view the swim deck from down here? That's not really what they're going to.
It's the TV monitor. We would actually have videos in the pool area, video cameras in the pool area of the meet, and hopefully we'd be able to live stream it on that TV monitor. So people who are nervous about being in heights or just don't want to be packed in the crowd, or there's not space, would they be able to watch it on the TV monitor that we've proposed to put in there?
I just wanted to be sure there wasn't some kind of glass going into the pool area from this hallway. Yeah. I missed something there.
No, good question, but yeah.
Okay. And I like the idea of a gender neutral bathroom too. So Yeah, I like this idea. Okay, I'll cede my time to the other members.
Liz, did you have questions?
Do I have any questions? No, I think it's a great idea. I kind of feel like I'm kind of surprised we didn't think of it earlier almost. It's like, and I agree with Katie. I've always seen that back entrance of our school is, for many people, it's the main entrance and for many visitors. And I was really excited just seeing the new lobby and the new, the Radnor High School on top, that presence, but that, I, for one, have been stuck many times in that little vestibule by those vending machines. And there is no communal space. There's no place, if you've been there in a crowded event, the kids are all on the floor, so the idea and that hallway is completely underutilized. So this makes a lot of sense to me. And the bathroom, again, as someone who used to have a lot of little kids and you'd have to go into the girls' bathroom. I have 3 little boys. It was just the idea of a family bathroom or gender neutral is a great addition. And I think, I'm also a swim parent, so I really appreciate if I could live stream, see something outside of, those very long meets and very hot sometimes. But also, doesn't that apply for a basketball game or some other, a wrestling match that could
Football,
be,
if it's too cold outside, even maybe, yes.
and the idea really of the communal space, those like having a place where the students can gather, to me, and those tables, it just, and then the history, and I totally agree with you, Lydia, it's not limited, of course, to sports. There's a lot to be proud of, and history is, we have a lot that we could display there, and I like the idea of maybe that it's rotating. So I think, the sky's the limit on that. So I think this is terrific.
I'd just say the sky's the limit in the sense too, that we need to look at the whole building. And that's something Steve has helped us walk through. Steve has shown other areas where we could do, whether it's spirit, whether it's history, whether it's displays. And then we really need to take into account everything that already exists in the building and how we use those different areas and how we would want to use this with a focus on history and spirit, and really look at comprehensively the entire building area, because Steve also shared with us some opportunities for just where we could do different displays and things that we should be thinking about. So that's going to be part of the discussion moving forward.
It's great.
Sounds like we have consensus. Does anybody have anything else before can we move this along to the board meeting for next week? And I think, Mr. Behrens, you've agreed to join us next week, so you can, if the board members have questions about this as well, they can ask them then. I know some of them are watching. I'm getting texts with little questions. That's good. It means they're excited about it. Interesting.
Yes, absolutely. I'll be there. And I didn't mean to sound flippant about the alternate option, but it's something that was reviewed with our engineers, and I was remiss in not mentioning Fadavia, the construction manager as well, who contributed to this as well as helped with the estimation of it.
Right. I know James is watching, and also I appreciate Michelle being here in case we had questions about bonding. Probably in the interest of time, those questions might come up next week, but I appreciate you being here.
Does anybody have any new business this evening? Great. As any public comment come in, Mr. Bachelor?
Let me just check. Hold on. No, we're good.
Okay, great. Then with that, I think we're going to adjourn. I just want to let the public know, and all of you, the Facilities Committee will be meeting again next month on November 17th. And currently the plan is to meet at 6:30. So hopefully we'll see you all here. Have a good night.
Thank you all.